The Broken Alliance. The stars were quiet, the kind of quiet that sent chills through the spine. Far below, in the heart of Earth's military command center, General Carter sat in the dim light of a war room, staring at a holographic map. The alien coalition had pushed humanity to the edge, but they had never expected humans to fight back this fiercely. The war had started years ago with the aliens invading Earth's outer colonies. The Galactic Council believed humans were weak and would crumble under the pressure of their superior technology. They were wrong. Humanity had fought tooth and nail. Every planet, every colony had sent soldiers, engineers, and civilians into battle. Earth wasn't the same as it was when the war began. The cities had been rebuilt after the first attacks. Technology advanced beyond what the aliens thought was possible. And most importantly, humanity's will to survive grew stronger every day. The ceasefire request had arrived just hours earlier, a transmission from the Alien Council, pleading for peace. The words were humble, desperate even, as if they knew that this was their last chance. The message was simple: we wish to surrender. The war is over. We will leave your space and never return. Please, let us end the suffering. General Carter couldn't believe his ears. He had expected the aliens to fight until their last breath, not bow down like this. His fist clenched at the table as he heard the words. He could still remember the images of burning colonies, the faces of civilians caught in the crossfire. He could still hear the screams of those who had died in the early days of the war. No, he was not going to let the aliens escape this easily. The command center hummed with activity, officers speaking in hushed tones, typing on their consoles. The tension in the room was thick, palpable. The generals and military leaders from all over the world had been called in to discuss the message. As Carter's eyes scanned the room, he saw their expressions. There was no joy, no relief in their eyes. They had fought too hard to give up now. "General Carter, we need a response," said one of the officers, Colonel Stevens. His voice was steady but carried a hint of doubt. "They're offering peace. This could be our chance to end this war without further bloodshed." Carter slammed his fist on the table, making the entire room jump. "You think peace will end this?" he snapped. "These aliens have burned our cities, enslaved our people, and wiped out our colonies. And now they want peace. After all the destruction they've caused, they think they can just walk away." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Carter, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath and straightened his back. "We don't negotiate with enemies who have no honor. They want peace because they're losing. We won't let them walk away. We're going to make them pay for everything they've done to us." Colonel Stevens shifted uncomfortably. "But sir, if we push them too far, we risk annihilation. We don't know what their full power is. We could be walking into a trap." Carter's eyes burned with determination. "I know what they can do. We've seen their power, but we fought them at every turn, and now, it's time to finish this. We take the fight to their homeworld. We don't give them a chance to regroup. We destroy their empire from the inside." The officers exchanged nervous glances. It was a bold move, but Carter's plan had worked before. If anyone could lead humanity to victory, it was him. But the risks were high. "Sir, if we go this route, there's no turning back," Stevens warned. "We could be facing the end of everything. The war could escalate beyond what we can control." "I'm well aware of the stakes," Carter replied coldly. "But I'm also aware that we can't let these aliens walk away after everything they've done to us. We'll strike them where it hurts, and we'll make sure they never have the chance to attack again." A long silence followed. Carter could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It wasn't just about winning the war anymore. It was about setting an example for the rest of the galaxy. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. It was time to show the universe that Earth wasn't a place to be reckoned with. Finally, Colonel Stevens nodded. "Understood, General. We'll begin preparations for the assault." Carter stood up, his voice firm. "Make it happen. Tell every fleet to prepare for immediate departure. We won't stop until the alien coalition is no more." As the officers scrambled to execute the orders, Carter turned back to the holographic map. The alien coalition had made a grave mistake. They thought they could break humanity's spirit, that they could control Earth's future. But they were wrong. The war had changed everything. Humanity had grown stronger, smarter, and more determined. Now the aliens would face the consequences of underestimating Earth. The war had only just begun. A communication was sent in a panic. The Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before, a desperate plea for peace from the most powerful empire in the universe. On their homeworld, the leaders of the alien coalition sat in a dark, dimly lit chamber. Their once proud empire was crumbling, and the weight of their losses hung heavily in the air. Supreme Overlord Xylox stood at the center of the room, his alien form towering over the others. His face, usually cold and calculating, was now twisted with anxiety. His species had conquered countless civilizations, enslaved entire star systems, and destroyed worlds. They had never known defeat. But now, facing the human rebellion, their strength was no longer enough. The humans had fought back in ways they couldn't have predicted. They were more than resilient. They were relentless. "We cannot keep going like this," Xylox's second-in-command, Commander Vlarok, said, his voice trembling with frustration. "Their forces are overwhelming. We've lost 3 major fleets in the last month alone. And now, our homeworld is under threat." Xylox clenched his fists, the sharp claws digging into his palms. He had never been one to show weakness, but this was different. The human forces had pushed them to the brink of extinction. He couldn't allow his empire to collapse. Not like this. Not in disgrace. "The humans are too stubborn," Vlarok continued. "They are fighting with a ferocity we didn't expect. They aren't just defending their colonies. They're attacking us. And they seem to be growing stronger with every battle." Xylox's mind raced. He had underestimated the humans, and now the consequences were clear. But even in the face of such disaster, he was a leader, a ruler who had commanded galaxies to fall in line. There had to be a way out of this. He couldn't let the alien empire crumble under his watch. "We need to make contact with them," Xylox finally said, his voice low but filled with cold determination. "We need to offer them a ceasefire, a surrender. If we don't, they'll wipe us out completely." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. The alien empire had never before asked for peace. It had always been the conqueror, not the conquered. But Xylox knew there was no other option. The war was no longer winnable for them. They were facing an enemy who refused to give up, no matter the cost. "We'll send them a message," Xylox decided. "A final offer. If they refuse, we'll prepare for the worst." As the officers scrambled to prepare the transmission, Xylox's mind drifted back to the early days of the war. When they first invaded human space, they had expected an easy victory. The humans were primitive, they thought, a divided species with no real unity. But the humans had surprised them, shocking them with their technological advances, their adaptability, and most of all, their unwillingness to back down. The images haunted him. Images of human soldiers wiping out entire alien battalions, human fleets decimating his starships, and worst of all, the look of pure defiance in the eyes of the survivors. They fought with an intensity that the alien species had never encountered before. As the transmission was prepared, Xylox stood tall, staring out the window of his command center. He could see the devastation his people had caused: burned planets, ruined colonies, and the hollowed-out remains of cities. Yet now he was begging for mercy from the very species they had tried to conquer. The message was simple: "We offer peace. End the war now. Leave human space, and we will spare your lives. The fighting ends here." Once the transmission was sent, there was no turning back. Xylox knew that if the humans rejected his offer, there would be no hope left for his people. It was a gamble, one that he wasn't sure would pay off. As he waited for a response, he couldn't shake the feeling that the humans would not show the mercy he had hoped for. They had lost too much. The humans had suffered too deeply to forgive the alien empire's actions. Hours passed in silence, tension building as every officer in the room waited for the reply. When the communication finally came through, the anticipation was unbearable. The message was brief. The response from Earth's military leadership came through loud and clear. It wasn't a promise of peace, it was a promise of war. "We don't negotiate with invaders." General Carter's voice crackled through the transmission. "You will regret this request. Prepare yourselves for what's coming." Xylox felt a chill run down his spine. The humans weren't afraid. They were angry. And that anger would drive them to finish what they had started. The alien empire had been wrong. They had underestimated humanity's strength, its resolve. And now, the galaxy would learn the cost of that mistake. As Xylox turned to his officers, the grim reality set in. There would be no escape. Humanity's wrath would be unlike anything the universe had ever seen. The once mighty alien empire was now on the brink of annihilation. The question was no longer whether they could survive. It was whether they could do anything to stop humanity's fury. The response from General Carter had been swift and unforgiving. The aliens, who had once believed themselves to be the ultimate force in the galaxy, now found themselves facing the full wrath of humanity. As the Alien Council reeled from the rejection of their ceasefire request, a new, more dangerous phase of the war began. Back on Earth, the military leadership was already mobilizing for the next steps. General Carter stood before a large screen, the faces of commanders from around the world staring back at him. His resolve was firm, but the weight of the decision hung heavy on his shoulders. They had just rejected an offer from the aliens, an offer that could have saved countless lives. But it was a mistake humanity could never forgive. "They've made their choice," Carter said, his voice cold and steady. "The ceasefire was a trap. They expected us to be weak, to crumble in the face of their power. But we've shown them we're not afraid. We're going to end this. And we're going to end it on our terms." Around him, the commanders nodded in agreement. The room was filled with a sense of grim determination. The aliens had overestimated their ability to control Earth's future. Now it was time to strike back. "We've already begun mobilizing the fleet," Colonel Stevens said, his voice clipped. "We've gathered every available ship, every available soldier. We're ready to move on their homeworld." Carter turned toward the screen, his eyes scanning the various faces of his officers. "This is it. We're going to hit them hard. No mercy. We take the fight to their doorstep. It's time to show them why humanity will never fall." The officers exchanged determined glances. They had been preparing for this moment for years, but now it felt real. Now they had to face the true cost of their decision. The next few hours were a blur of action. Troops were readied, fleets were deployed, and every soldier knew what was at stake. But it wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was no longer the weak, scattered species that the aliens had believed them to be. They were powerful, united, and unstoppable. As the fleet launched, Carter couldn't help but think about the first days of the war. The days when humanity was unsure of its place in the galaxy, when the threat of alien domination felt inevitable. But those days were long gone now. Humanity had adapted, had fought back, and had grown stronger with each battle. Now, they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of Earth, and for the future of every civilization the aliens had destroyed. The alien homeworld lay far across the galaxy, but humanity's forces were closing in quickly. The fleet of warships stretched out, a massive armada of strength and will. Each ship was a symbol of humanity's resolve, its unity, and its refusal to back down. As they neared the alien homeworld, Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. "Prepare for the assault," Carter commanded, his voice steady. "We hit them with everything we've got." The countdown began, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. The entire fleet was prepared for what would come next. No one in that room doubted their mission. They had been through too much, lost too many, to back out now. The first wave of missiles and bombardments was launched at the alien homeworld, striking the surface with brutal precision. The explosions were deafening, the shockwaves shaking the very foundation of the planet. Alien defenses scrambled to react, but it was too late. The human forces were relentless. General Carter watched as the enemy homeworld began to burn. Cities were obliterated in seconds. The alien forces tried to retaliate, but they were outmatched. Every assault they launched was met with an even stronger counterattack from humanity's fleets. The humans had taken the fight to their doorstep, and they weren't going to stop until their enemy was crushed beneath their boots. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about making sure that no other species would suffer the way humanity had. The alien empire's cruelty had gone on long enough. The galaxy would never forget the cost of underestimating Earth's power. As the battle raged on, the message to the aliens was clear. Humanity had awakened, and there was no force in the galaxy that could stand against it. Carter knew the war was far from over, but in that moment, as the alien planet burned, he couldn't help but feel a rush of triumph. Humanity had risen. Humanity had taken back its future. But deep inside, he knew the fight was far from finished. There would be more battles to come. The aliens may have underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again. The galaxy had just witnessed a force unlike anything it had ever seen. The alien homeworld was burning. The sky above was filled with the trails of human warships, unleashing destruction upon the once mighty empire. But the aliens were not willing to go down without a fight. Deep beneath the surface of their capital city, Supreme Commander Vorthak watched the devastation on the holographic display. His claws clenched in frustration as his generals surrounded him, their expressions filled with fear. "They are relentless," one of his officers stammered. "Our planetary defenses are struggling to hold them back." Vorthak slammed his fist on the table, his reptilian eyes glowing with rage. "We were supposed to be superior. How can mere humans be pushing us to the brink of destruction?" Another general, his voice shaking, spoke up. "Supreme Commander, we miscalculated. We thought they were weak, but they have only grown stronger with every battle." Outside, the war raged on. The alien fleets were fighting desperately, their ships forming defensive barriers in the sky. They launched counterattacks, trying to break through humanity's overwhelming assault, but their weapons were proving ineffective. Humanity had studied them, learned from their past encounters, and adapted. On the bridge of the human flagship Eclipse, General Carter observed the battle unfold. His face was unreadable as he watched the alien forces scramble like cornered animals. "They're fighting harder now," remarked Colonel Stevens, standing beside him. "They know they're losing," Carter replied coldly. "But that won't stop them. A desperate enemy is the most dangerous kind." Just then, an alarm blared. "Sir, enemy forces are concentrating fire on the left flank," a tactical officer reported. "They're making a push toward our carriers." Carter's eyes narrowed. He knew what the aliens were trying to do: cripple humanity's ability to sustain the assault. If they could destroy the carriers, they might stand a chance of slowing down the invasion. "They're betting everything on this counterattack," Carter said. "We're not letting them succeed." He turned toward his officers. "Deploy the Titan-class dreadnoughts to the left flank. Have the Vanguard and Retribution reinforce the carriers. I want heavy artillery firing on any ship that gets too close." As his orders were relayed, humanity's forces adjusted immediately. The massive dreadnoughts moved into position, their cannons charging up before unleashing devastating energy blasts. Enemy ships exploded in fiery bursts, their debris scattering across the battlefield. Inside the alien command center, Vorthak's heart pounded as he watched his forces being torn apart. His most powerful warships were being decimated one by one. His empire, which had ruled over countless worlds, was collapsing before his very eyes. One of his officers turned to him, his voice barely a whisper. "Supreme Commander, we cannot win this." For the first time in his life, Vorthak felt true fear. Not just for his empire, but for his own survival. The humans weren't just winning. They were annihilating everything in their path. "We have no choice," he growled. "Prepare the final contingency plan." His officers exchanged nervous glances. They all knew what he meant. It was a last, desperate act, one that could change the course of the war. Back on the human flagship, Carter was about to issue his next command when another alarm went off. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface," a communications officer shouted. "It's..." The screen suddenly filled with light. A blinding energy surge erupted from the alien capital, racing toward the human fleet. The war had just taken a dangerous turn. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the alien capital, racing toward the human fleet like a dying empire's final scream. On board the Eclipse, alarms blared as the wave expanded outward. "Impact in 5 seconds," a tactical officer shouted. General Carter gritted his teeth. "Shields at maximum. Brace for impact." The human fleet shifted formation, their energy shields flaring to life. The pulse struck with violent force, shaking the ships. Smaller vessels were tossed aside like leaves in a storm, and even the mighty dreadnoughts groaned under the strain. Then silence. The energy dissipated into the void. The human ships, though battered, were still standing. Carter exhaled. "Status report." "Shields held, sir, but we've lost 3 destroyers." An officer responded grimly. "Some ships have sustained heavy damage, but we're still operational." Carter turned his gaze toward the alien capital. That had been a desperate move, but it had failed. He wasn't surprised. The aliens had underestimated humanity from the start. And now, even in their last moments, they still didn't understand. "Prepare the final assault," he ordered. Inside the Alien War Council chamber, Supreme Commander Vorthak watched in horror. His people's ultimate weapon, a last resort energy wave meant to disable the human fleet, had barely made a dent. His officers were silent, their faces grim. "It didn't work," one of them whispered. Vorthak slammed his fist onto the control panel. "How? That should have crippled them." An intelligence officer's voice wavered as he spoke. "They adapted, Supreme Commander. They knew it was coming. And they prepared." Vorthak's claws trembled. The humans had always adapted. Every time the Empire thought they had broken them, humanity found a way to fight back. Stronger, faster, deadlier. The chamber doors burst open, and a frantic soldier rushed in. "Supreme Commander, human forces are advancing. They've broken through the last orbital defenses. We're out of options." A cold realization settled over Vorthak. This was the end. A distant explosion shook the chamber. The humans were here. "We need to surrender," one of his generals said desperately. Vorthak turned to him slowly, eyes burning with rage. "Surrender? After what we've done to them?" He shook his head. "They won't accept it. They'll wipe us out." Another explosion, closer this time. The ceiling cracked, dust raining down. Vorthak exhaled, closing his eyes for a moment. He had led his empire into a war they could never win. And now he would pay the price. He turned to his officers, his voice quiet but firm. "Prepare the ceasefire transmission. If they won't accept surrender, we'll beg for mercy." No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The war was over. But what came next was up to humanity. The alien capital was in ruins. Fires raged through the once proud city, the sky filled with thick smoke and the distant echoes of explosions. Human troops had landed, sweeping through the strongholds that still resisted. The battle was nearly over. Inside the War Council chamber, Supreme Commander Vorthak stood motionless, his claws gripping the edges of the command table. His generals were silent, their expressions filled with defeat. The transmission had been sent, an official plea for a ceasefire. Now, all they could do was wait. A sharp beep echoed through the chamber. The human flagship Eclipse had responded. Vorthak took a deep breath and activated the holographic display. The image of General Carter appeared, his expression unreadable. "Supreme Commander Vorthak," Carter said, his voice cold and measured. "You requested a ceasefire." Vorthak swallowed his pride. "Yes. The war is lost. We surrender." Carter didn't react. He simply stared, his eyes piercing. "Surrender," he repeated. "After years of slaughtering our colonies, enslaving our people, and burning our worlds, now you surrender." Vorthak felt a chill run down his spine. "We were wrong," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "We underestimated humanity. We thought you were weak." Carter leaned forward slightly. "And now?" Vorthak hesitated before answering. "Now we understand. Humanity is stronger than we ever imagined." For a long moment, there was silence. The fate of an entire species hung in the air. Finally, Carter spoke. "Your forces will stand down immediately. Any act of resistance will be met with lethal force." Vorthak nodded. "Understood." Carter's eyes darkened. "But understand this, Supreme Commander. There will be consequences. You don't get to walk away from this war without paying the price." The screen flickered off. The decision had been made. Vorthak turned to his generals. "Order all remaining forces to surrender," he commanded. His voice, once filled with arrogance and power, was now hollow. The war was over, but what humanity would do next? That was the real fear. The alien empire had fallen. Its war machines lay in ruins, its fleets shattered, its once mighty rulers reduced to pleading for mercy. But humanity had not yet decided their fate. Aboard the human flagship Eclipse, General Carter stood before a massive display screen. Reports flooded in: surrendered troops, captured warships, abandoned cities. The alien empire was finished. Admiral Vasquez stepped forward. "Sir, all enemy forces have surrendered. The Supreme Commander is in custody. What are your orders?" Carter stared at the screen. For years, humanity had fought against these creatures. They had suffered, bled, and lost billions. The easy answer would be revenge, to wipe them out completely. But was that who they were? He exhaled. "Open a broadcast to the fleet. I want every soldier, every officer, every crew member to hear this." A green light flashed. The channel was open. "This war was not of our choosing," Carter began, his voice firm. "The enemy came to our worlds, believing us weak. They burned our homes, enslaved our people, and tried to erase us from existence. But they were wrong." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We have proven our strength. We have shattered their fleets, torn down their armies, and broken their spirit. They now beg for mercy. Some of you want revenge. Some of you want to see them suffer as we did." The fleet listened in silence. "But we are not like them," Carter continued. "We do not slaughter the defenseless. We do not become the monsters we fought against. The war is over, and now we decide what comes next." He turned to Vasquez. "Prepare the war trials. Their leaders will answer for their crimes. Their empire will be dismantled. But the civilians, the innocent, they will not suffer for the crimes of their rulers." Vasquez nodded. "Understood, sir." The broadcast ended, but the message was clear. Humanity had won. But instead of becoming conquerors, they would become something even greater, judges of the galaxy. And from that day forward, no species would ever dare to underestimate humanity again.